Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Every company has a story to tell, from the small startup to the large enterprise, and everything in between. This is one of them. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Marco.
Sean.
I'm ready to do the same thing again.
What?
It didn't work last time, but I'm going to do it again anyway.
Oh, no. Well, why would you do something that doesn't work to start?
Because it looks shiny and new. Somebody told me it was going to help me.
All right.
So, It's doing the same thing. Called a different name, has AI in the name or something. I don't know. It's got to be better, right? Even though it does the same thing again.
It could be better, but you know what? I'm a traditionalist. I like vintage stuff. So I'm gonna stick with the old.
All right,
you're
sticking vinyl and I'm talking metaverse music here.
Yep, I'm going with a calculator. You know, like one of those Texas instrument, old school, and you're not gonna change my mind.
All right. Well, the difference between what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, is the calculator actually works. And if you apply it to something, it's going to solve a problem for you. If you try to make it do something it's not supposed to do, or try to apply a technology to something that
you know what? I'm going to ask you one thing, and then we introduce our guest, because I know he has a lot of answers.
Like, what the hell are these guys doing?
Yeah, I know. It's good. It's good. It's good energy. So, do you think that the first person that saw the calculator it was presented to, do you think they double checked the result, or did they trust it right away? Where they're like,
that's a good question.
What if it's not right?
Right.
So, I think where we're going with this is, do we welcome technology right away, or those things that really matter? And we have plenty of story in the technology world. They need their time to be accepted. But somebody got to take that leap, have that vision, and bring it on. And today we're going to tell that story because, we're telling a story, Sean.
We are telling a story. It's my favorite time to dig into technology and how, I know, Marco, you love the societal aspect of this thing. And together we line up with the human element. Typically the security practitioners and the business leaders trying to build a business that actually does something meaningful, but they need to protect that revenue and the growth that they create. So let's introduce our guest, Aviv Cohen from Pentera. Aviv, thanks for joining us today.
Marco, Sean, nice to meet you. Great to be here with you.
And it's great to have you on. And I don't know. I said I'd dig into this at some point. I want to start with before we hear who you are. There's a row of colorful images behind you, and those aren't just something you found at a swap meet. Those are very personal items. But what's behind us here?
Well, we do in Pentera a series of cartoons that are specialized to cybersecurity life, have to do with basically the life of cybersecurity personnel, and have to do with society. And this is the way for us to actually laugh and add some humor to the technology products and services that we provide. These are all bestsellers that are published also on CyberHab. And the general feedback is just keep them coming. So there's nothing like mixing a little bit of humor into the very serious world of cybersecurity technology.
Absolutely. And I think there's a personal element there as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a hobby. I draw them up. Actually work with a few people here in the Pentera team to validate that the humor goes, and then we get them professionally drawn and publish them. So far, so good. I think we have about 40 of them going in a rate of one a month.
I love it. And the reason I wanted to start there, one is it's very appealing in the background there, but it's also very personal, and it tells a story about who Pentera is and who you are, in that you're very creative, and you think things differently than maybe some of the other organizations. So with that, Now, a little bit about who you are, maybe a quick view into how you got into cybersecurity and your path to being part of the Pentera Sec team.
Sure. I want to say that you're right about one thing. There are a lot of technologies and a lot of companies that are part of the defense system. And Pentera comes from the hacker's point of view, the adversary's point of view and mindset. And that's a completely different mindset. There's one thing about defending and access and even detection and response. The other thing is basically how to break it, how to infiltrate. And this very different point of view is in the genes of the company. We do a lot of things different in the company. And that kind of approach is also what makes it fun to work here, truly. So myself, 4 lifetimes, I was an aviator, then a programmer, then a product manager, and now I had marketing for the past 5 years in Pentera. And marketing and product management has been really the main part of my career. I get really excited about changing people's lives with technology. And it just happens to be that, like in the Netflix series The Last Dance, this seems to be like one of those companies who is really making a dent, making a change, and growing ultra fast. And I'd love to tell you more about why that is happening in the world today.
I would love to hear that, because it's definitely part of the origin story, which is what we like to call their story that we tell with the company. I know already that there is a really good, passionate story and a call to action why Pentera was created. So I think it's a perfect segue to what you were already starting to tell us. So please tell us the why.
So indeed, the story is the story of Arik Liberzon, our founder, and today our CTO and head of the R&D and product teams. He was the head of the red team for the Israeli Defense Forces, and he was charted with pen testing or red teaming all the strategic assets against nation state levels of threats. And it did so with a great number of people, like you do red teaming with ethical hackers and red teamers. But he also had another part of his brain, which was about software. And he kind of fused the two and just had an aha moment that I can do everything that I'm doing here with people, I can do in software. I can shrink wrap a red team in a box into software and give every enterprise in the world, irrespective of their budget, the power I have here, with this big red team in the army. I can give them that power in software to every business in the world. That's one thing that had the audacity and the nerve and this huge vision, because what happened is that people thought he was joking. He said, can't be. How can you take a ethical hacker and model him into software? It's like, how can it be done? But he saw like the repetitive task. He kind of saw the patterns and the mechanism. And the other thing, while he was doing these pen testing exercise, very large month-long exercises, and then showing the results, he also understood how the language of the results can be much simplified so decision makers and generals can make big decisions about prioritizing resources. And he invented this visual language to explain to people how did the pen testing go, how did the attack vector produced. And with these two things, he actually let go of his career, put down the pension that was promised, and went on his way. And initially it was a tough way, the walk in the desert, where people thought it's too big of a vision. It can't happen. So he went about a bootstrap, or mostly bootstrap, with another founder called Arik Feingold, and they built the first prototype. And guess what? It worked. And fast forward about 4.5 years from going to market, we're about 600 enterprise customers strong in production in more than 40 countries. We're about 250 people in the company. and the growth rate, irrespective of the down economy, is continuing to be very, very strong. And the reason is that basically his vision was true to the dot, that people do not have any means to test that their security works today against the latest attacks. It's as simple as that. When you go to people, do you know that your security is good and ready against the latest attacks today? All of it. Not a sample. Against the latest attacks. And people say, of course not. Like, we did the pen test a year ago. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. I have all the things in place. I have a SOC. I have, I have a firewall. I have all the things in place. I have detection response. But if I'm ready, I hope so.
So Aviv, I want to maybe before you continue, maybe touch on one point, because I've been looking at some stuff like business platform models and things like that, where a lot of the stuff that I've seen, it says if you try to change the behavior of any one entity that's connects to this platform, and I'll say information security is kind of the platform right now. If you're trying to change the behavior of any entity, it's the solution may not do as well as it could, may not scale to the point like your founder thought it might. So I'm wondering how does he look, and how does the team look at, how do you look at fitting into how people think about cybersecurity? Do they need to change the way they look at it, or are you fitting in and just giving them information in a different way? I'm trying to figure out how this connects to both the team that's responsible for the protection, but also the business team that needs to know that the answer to the question, are we protected? Because it seems like that those 2 points were very clear to him as he took this first step into this journey.
So I think with the early adopters, people got it right away. But now that we're in the early and late majority stages of the company, indeed, there's some resistance because the concept and the product is pretty revolutionary, and people need to use their imagination to think about a different reality than the reality that is today. And so a lot of what we get a lot is this is too good to be true. But if it works, so we need to, and we do show them that it works. And I think you're right about the fact you open with it with a calculator, that when we were kids and we got the first calculator, we tried to see if the calculator would fail, and we double checked. I think when Kasparov, the chess master, played against Deep Blue, we didn't know who to bet. Maybe can the computer beat Kasparov or not? Well, it was a tie once, and then he beat them, and then, But today we know that any iPhone can beat any chess master, hands down, no problem. You just put the setting to so many moves ahead, and it works. I think people tend to think that a machine would be an inferior to a person, but then with time we discover that it's not the case. It depends on the topic. Another good example is trading. We used to think that traders in the stock market, they can smell the moves of the market. It's all algo trading today. So in the same way of security validation or pen testing, I'm telling you, this is algo pen testing. So initially you would say, sounds like a tall order. But I am telling you, like 5 years from now, people are going to look back at manual penetration testing and ask themselves, like, what was that really? It's going to be as transformational. I mean, like I said, we have hundreds of customers that are already living this different life. And you say innovation is here, but not equally distributed. But you're right about the fact that it's not, for some people, it takes some time and explanation till they wrap their hands around a radically new technology. It's one of the challenges, and we just need to walk that walk.
Yeah, I think it's as you're talking, it's a little bit psychological, right? It's kind of like self-preserving. Like I, as a human, I must be the one responsible for all of this. I must be better than a machine, right? And I'm wondering if, in the end, I mean, what's your take in the vision on the augmented potentiality of the humans that are in the SOC, the human that are in the other industry that are working with artificial intelligence, with machine learning to improve what they do. So, I mean, are we scaring people really to say human out of the picture, or are we talking about a better humanity here?
So definitely, it's an augmenting tool, and I'll explain. First of all, there are about 3 million unmanned cybersecurity jobs in the world. Cybersecurity takes a lot of time to master, and there's just not enough people. Automated security validation or automated penetration testing takes away a lot of the mundane stuff, but there's always the part for the human, especially around bespoke application penetration testing, where each case is a bit different. And some exotic scenarios, including physical, including social engineering, that cannot yet be modeled into software. But that doesn't say that such a power tool can take a whole lot of the heavy lifting and do that part much better. And I think that you can't solve everything with technology. The man in the loop is really important in scoping and deciding, and looking at the results, etc. But at the same time, I would say that there's a lot for software to be done in this area that is today completely manual. Today, pen testing is done exactly as it was done 10 years ago. And if you think about it, that's crazy.
So talk to me about the program. So the security program at large. So there's a team, different people responsible for different things. Penetration testing is one part. There's a SOC, there's endpoint management, all these different parts. App dev, sec DevOps, DevSecOps, whatever you want to call it. How does ASV fit into that? Who takes the reins of this technology and solution that you bring, and how does it connect to the other parts of the security program? And then what team rallies around ASV to make sure that it fits in properly? Can you paint that picture for us?
I can try. So I think there's two sides to it. The first side is really, we're talking about security operations and IT here. The first part is, prevention, detection, response, and recovery if needed, where that is part of the security operations centers responsible of putting the security controls, maintaining them, and operating them, monitoring them, and then when there is an incident, detecting it and responding to it. Let's call it that, the critical path. Another practice has to do with risk management and risk reduction. And that part of the house, you can say it, think about it as when an attack is not happening, you'd like to manage your vulnerabilities, you manage to patch, reduce exposures, fix your security, add additional controls, and overall, like I said, reduce your exposure and become better prepared and ready for the attack so you don't need to deal with it. So that is a side of the house that happens in parallel, depending on the size of an organization. In small organizations, it's the same exact team. In big organizations, there's people that are responsible for vulnerabilities, for risk, for red teaming, for pen testing, and have to do with that world. And these are the people that also use Pentera very so often.
What I'm thinking still is the complexity. People that will refuse this idea that the machine could do the man's humans job, they always find themselves struggling though with all these false positives and all this external complexity. So I'm curious to know, once they see what they can do, once they try that calculator and they see that it's actually correct most of the time, all the time, and calculator can be corrected all the time, what's that aha moment? Your founder had this aha moment when he thought about it. how is that aha moment of the people that actually say, wow, okay, this is actually a really great improvement for what we do?
So I definitely think this is an area of show, don't tell. I can speak about it all day long, but until you see it, you see an automated pen testing running on your own environment. The environment its good parts, its bad parts. You can compare it to the latest pen test done, and suddenly you see within an hour or two that all the environment is tested. And possibly you see how an attacker can come in through this window, through this interface, using this password that was found in this shared folder, and get to the crown jewels. And you're saying, you know what? I've learned something new here in these 2 hours. I realized that what I've seen here in 2 hours would take 2 people 2 weeks. I can understand the value. The reaction is typically very emotional, where they say, okay, now I see it, now I understand it. In terms of when you have something that's such a leap, you can talk about it but you're not going to actually understand it until you see it. And I would say see it in your own environment that you know, not in some lab or anything like that. You need to see that work. And then everything suddenly changes. In the same way with the calculator, you gave the example earlier. After a few calculation, and you see, it's the result is good. Suddenly, it kind of grows on you, and the change begins. So
let me add one thing, Aviv, if I may. You mentioned at the beginning the part of the vision was to actually simplify visually the result. Like I'm assuming the data visualization. So the way that the people can see the result. I think you're doing illustration, you're doing comics, you're definitely a very creative person. So I'm assuming that the easiness of understanding what's come out from the black box, that is not a black box, but it's transparent what it does. I'm assuming that's a big element into that understanding, right?
It is a big element, but it starts with the fact that penetration testing is a service that is typically delivered by a third party. So it's something that people come in, they do their thing. I'm not sure exactly what, and they show me where I'm possibly vulnerable. Now we're moving to a do-it-yourself. Okay, so I didn't know I could be a pen tester, but now I set it up and I press play and it runs and I get a report that I can read and suddenly understand, and I can explain to my boss, okay, they came through here, they took this password, they applied it here, they privileged escalation here, then they moved because they did a pivot to that other network that is called the HR network, and you see the path, and suddenly you're saying, okay, I can do it myself. It's about, I would compare it to IKEA, okay? Well, not everyone can put together furniture, but IKEA made it that simple with that manual that initially we weren't sure, but then after the first IKEA chair, you feel, okay, that's pretty simple, and I can do it myself. So again, it has to do with the fact that you need to put it in people's hands, both the software and what we're talking about is how it presents its results, how it tells you the story. And suddenly it empowers you to say, okay, I understand. Maybe I didn't understand how adversaries work till today, like, breach. But all of a sudden I can understand, okay, it's just a path and how they walked. And now I understand how it can happen. And it actually takes off that curtain of what is penetration testing and what is hacking. I can see it, I can understand it, and I can definitely defend against it. Because now I understand, okay, all I need is to fix here and here, and they just can't come through. All I need is just to add a few bars on that window and lock this door that was open, and I can go sleep pretty simply. So you're right.
I presume you might even see a common thread across many paths that say if you did this one thing, you might shore up 90% of the environment, right? This is the
Indeed.
exposure in many places, and if I just did this one thing.
So a classical example would be people have golden images where they create an image and they pave quite a few computers with that image. If that image can be reached with some admin password, then basically, in 5 seconds, the hacker can own 200 workstations just because they're basically the same mirror with some hard-coded password. And when we discover that and heal that, you understand the root cause, everything, because you see the entire vector of the story. You understand where you got and what was the root cause. You understand all you need is to fix that and rerun the test, see that that attack vector is gone, is not a viable attack vector, and it just becomes much, much simpler.
Now, I'm trying to figure out how best to present this question. Because a manual pen test, you have a person behind the systems, right, doing whatever they do. They may have had a bad night or a good night the night before, be creative or not. Might choose path A over path B for one project and path B over A for another, just because, right? So there's some variability there just because there's a human involved, or not. Maybe they have the same script and it's the same thing over and over and over, and you only go so deep because that's the service level you paid for your test. So I'm wondering how Pentera perhaps can continue to find deeper paths, multiple paths, and do it in a way that takes it to levels that a human may not in a standard manual test, but perhaps also leveraging some common best practices or common knowledge that says, we know we always have to go here because there's always gold in this particular place. So any thoughts on those 2 points?
So, when it comes to the power of the machine versus a human pen tester, the machine, doesn't need a cigarette break and doesn't need to go to sleep at night, and is multi-threaded and very, very fast. In terms of when you're a hacker, indeed, you need to place your bets, the hours that you have billed, and your experience matters a lot. Different pen testing houses have different qualities, but at the end of the day, like you said, it depends on the person and varies greatly. Now, if you have a corporate, let's say Coca-Cola, has so many affiliates, so many factories, etc., basically each one take his neighbor-friendly pen tester and tests differently. And the corporate or the enterprise is expected to run a risk governance policy which is unified. That doesn't kind of fit together very nicely. So aside from the fact that I want to talk about the 2 parts. One part is the machine, and I would compare it to looking before the winter comes if your roof is really, really isolated properly. Because when the winter comes, suddenly between the tiles might be one crack, and then you see the water dripping in your living room. But if you test just a few tiles, well, maybe they're good, but that one tile, that anomaly, is what usually breaks and creates the breach. It's not that people, Marriott, for example, that just had the July break with the 20 gigabytes of data. Marriott has great security. There was one point and one user name password. There's only one anomaly. You need to test everything. A person cannot do that. The power of the machine is that it tests all the combinations of malware and attack point and interface and users and data, and it just doesn't get tired. It does it in super speed, and that's the way you can really be sure that everything was tested. I think that's super important to realize that power. It provides a much, much better result.
And I feel like, sorry, I would like to add to this, like the fact that it does it continuously. As you say, it doesn't take the break, but it's also You can't say, hey, we pen tested a month ago, so we're good. I mean, you got to know where you are now. So the machine keeps on a loop, right? Checking this thing.
Yeah, I think people often, our customers frequently do a test per week. That's, the degree, because you need some time also to fix in between. But really what dictates is the fact that you have pen testing on demand or on tap. And it has to do with managing change. When things change, you add users, you add networks, you migrate to the cloud, which is a multi-year process, but has a lot of change within. Every change might create a vulnerability, and you want to be the first to know and fix it before it's exploited. So a lot of our customers have pen testing on just a weekly regular cadence, but when there are changes, that triggers, okay, we've made a change, let's see we didn't break anything. So the fact that you have it without dependency on a third party, without additional incremental cost. Say, okay, I've made a change, press play, test it, we're good, let's move on in the program. That is really how people use this term of continuous, because if everything is really fixed, no one is hired, no one is fired, everyone has the same privilege, and you've tested that once, even manually with a good, robust pen test, then maybe you don't need this. But the reality today, with work at home, VPNs, change, cloud, zero trust networks, is that there is a lot of change in the living organization and very little validation because it depends on third parties and is super expensive. That's the gap. And I think that's the gap that allows the fact that so many breaches actually happen. All the people that are breached, even if we take the last 6 months, Marriott, Shield Healthcare, Flagstar Bank, Shell, Kaseya, AXA, CNA, all of these organizations have great people, great security, great methodology, the latest tools, all of that is there. So what's wrong with the picture? Is it like, I'm telling you, what's wrong in the picture is that there's just not enough testing to make sure that it all works together, is all configured properly against the latest attacks. And if you test it, and often it's just a few fixes, you can actually make your tools deliver on their promise and become much more resilient. The fact is that after a while of people using the system, what they tell us is that when the third-party pen testers still come in for compliance occasion, on that annual occasion, they just don't find the things they used to find in the past. It's really, they say they come up empty-handed, and that's exactly how we want it to be.
So visibility, certainly a key side of the coin. The other is the remediation. And I know you touched briefly on helping to prioritize what's important. And I know that a traditional outsourced pen test, you get a PDF at the end, right? How do you convert that PDF into something that's actionable through a Jira or whatever ticketing system you're using to manage your things? And regardless of how it comes in, if you get it straight from a system, or you get it through a PDF that you have to export and transform into something else, there's still a long list, and vuln management fatigue is real, right? And how far down the list do you get, and is that enough? So talk to me a little bit about, you have the visibility. How do you bring that into the environment so the teams can actually work on the most important things at the right time, so that the remediation actually takes place?
All right. So again, I want to say by all means that a very good, thorough pen test by one of the big four firms, etc., can come out really, really beneficial and bring in a lot of findings that are really key and needs fixing. It could be great. But the question, like you ask, is about how do we automate this entire operation and be able to scale it? Because we can't keep putting more and more budget into cybersecurity. It's like a never-ending. At one point in time, we need to level that investment. And to level that investment, we need automation in all aspects of cybersecurity, not just about testing. So what our more advanced clients tell us is, of course, okay, link the entire thing that it's almost, let's call it semi-automated. So threat intelligence comes in, tell you what you need to test. You go about the test. You have the findings. The findings are linked into a ServiceNow or a QRadar or a source system like Palo Alto Cortex. And then you have the workflows to actually fix it. I'll give you an example. You discovered that there's a Bob123. There's always a Bob, right? There's a Bob123 password of one admin in one aspect of the cloud, and through that you can get to great achievements if you're a hacker. And that password was actually leaked, so that threat is real. Here's the path. All you need to do is just expire that password and change it with something else. Irrespective of the password, could be a machine password or a user password. It needs to be fixed instantly. And so you trigger that workflow, and it goes either to the user or to the admin to fix that password instantly, and it's gone. The attack vector is gone with very little work. Now, I agree, some of fixes, if you need to completely change segmentation, require downtime, etc. But a lot of the fixes are, hey, close this protocol, change this password, close the port, misconfigured firewall, misconfigured endpoint, unupdated, or just a vulnerability or a patch. And all these things can be triggered downstream automatically or semi-automatically. And that's really the vision of the entire industry of how to grow and maintain this high security posture and readiness. And you're right about that. It's not enough just to fix this part if you can't get it to the down end ticketing systems and then revalidate and rescore and make sure that this is actually a loop. And we're completely working with our partners and our APIs to make sure that that vision is a reality today, but would continue to be even better and more automated. And that's where the great CTOs of the world, in terms of the companies and the big banks, et cetera, are all aiming at, of how to create this thing that requires so much less people and so much less investment.
I love it. And when I'm doing my show, Redefining Cybersecurity, I often ask this question because I'm trying to figure out how to operationalize some aspect of a security program. And I'm always trying to see if there's a way to become more, I know we use the word proactive, but a different way to look at how we manage things. And what I'm trying to say is you can fight and manage a larger list of vulns if you can automate it, but it's still a large list of vulns, right? And I'm just wondering, can some of your customers look at what you produce and say, if we just actually built this thing differently, we would cut 50% of the exposure straight out the gates. We're not constantly having to patch that Windows machine. We're not constantly having to change the ports every time we deploy a new gold image or whatever. Change the way we actually build the business, change the workflow that runs the business, change the tech stack that's supporting that workflow so that we don't have the exposure in the first place, using the knowledge that they get from your solution to say, here's where that exposure keeps cropping up over and over and over. We're investing heavily to close the gaps there. If we just eliminate the gap from the beginning, that could help.
Yeah, so I think in terms of being proactive, and a lot of people talk about shift left, it's definitely the direction, but we need to remember that all the vulnerabilities that we're talking about happen because of software, right? New applications need to be developed and need to be developed fast and agile. And so when new applications are developed and new infrastructure is laid out, vulnerabilities will always be there. The thing is about how to to avoid those that are actually exploitable. So you have a certain amount of resources that you can do patching, and you have a certain amount of resources that you can do configuration. But the important thing is, irrespective of the pace that you do that, you need to always maintain resilience. So I think is part of it. You can't. I don't think that it's within reach today that everything that would be laid out will already be resilient to attacks. But what we need to do is to find a way to balance resources that we have to operate, operational resource of security, with the threats. If we can't say what's the real threat and we have all this busy work, that's the mismatch between resources and the busy work. But if we can actually pinpoint what's a true attack vector path that's proven and just focus on that, it's like 1 to 3% of what people are dealing with today, including false alarms, etc. And actually the resources would fit that mission. So I think it's once you take the clutter out, you discover very positively that the gap between resources and the mission kind of shrinks to something that's that can be handled, and that's good enough for our day and age to become so much better. If we can close that gap, it's a tremendous step forward from what most people have today in their operations.
Very cool. And as Sean always talk about, operationalizing and the business of cybersecurity, I talk about society a lot. And so my typical question is, all right, what's next? So I'm in charge of asking you to put your futuristic
predict the future.
to predict the future. No, and I feel like it's easy, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I mean, a company like this that has been fighting for the future really to come in, right? Even when people were not really that accepting it. I'm wondering what is next when you already brought the future. There is another future coming that's inevitable. So what's that?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So, before I talk about the future of the defenders, let's talk about the adversaries. Okay, the attackers.
All right. Yes.
It really pays out to be an attacker today. The ransomware attacks are worsening. They're making a good living. They're putting money into their R&D, and they're inventing more and more tools and automated tools for attack. Right today, you open a website. After a few minutes, it attacks because they try and crawl and attack everything without any discrimination. One place that there's no discrimination is cybersecurity. Everything is attacked all the time. So as long as that asymmetry of the battle, and they need to be right only once in order to get in. So as long as they're making a good living and money is going on the adversary side, defenders will always be on their back foot. If we want to talk about the future, about how we balance this equation and how it's about machines fighting machines or coping with machines. While they have automated attacks, I think the world made a great advancement in the XDR era. Definitely in terms of detection and response, that's getting there in order to match up. And I think that when it comes to risk identification and like being proactive, getting to a better posture and removing exposure, that's the part that is, like I said, way behind. But if people get that and become stop being easy targets relative to the amount of work that needs to be done, then that industry and predator prey kind of equation will change, and that's the future we all want to be part of. Then we create something of a balance. And I would, if you'd like, thinking on my feet here, I would say that it's a good balance that we have with physical security. Generally speaking, if you open a bank, of course, there's chances that it will be robbed, but with the current defenses and police and everything we have, it's not as frequent as it used to be in the 19th century, okay, or the early 19th century. So, but in cybersecurity, it's not the case. It's way behind. We need to get to that point, and that point, in the future, we need to do these changes. And that's my prediction for the future, that these technologies, irrespective if it's Pentera or some other companies, would become table stakes and help the good guys win the battle, or equate the field. And from that point on, I think cybersecurity would stop being what it is today, which is one of the prime risks for a business. And let's hope for that.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I love the fact that you're making the comparison with the physical security. I think that's the big challenge. It's been the big challenge since when I started talking about this industry, Sean, where it's just like you do close the door, you do close, lock the car, and you do all these things, but you have fire alarm inside. You minimize the physical risk, but you just can't wrap your head around how the cyber risk is there, and it's part of a business plan. It gotta be, Sean. It gotta be.
Well, I think it goes back to the vision and the inspiration for Pentera in the beginning, which is it's all about scaling, right? I mean,
true.
How fast can you break multiple windows on a bank, or dig tunnels to get into the safe and crack a safe? Right? You can only do that so fast, right? And probably one bank at a time. But here in the digital realm, everything is, to Avi's point, automated as an attack as well. So, and the bar is not very high to get in. So I think
the bar is Bob 1 2 3. That's the bar.
It's Bob 1 2 3, exactly. So I think, what you're doing there, Aviv, is incredible. And to your point, they're only going to know if they give it a shot. And so hopefully folks who listen to this recognize what their current pen test program looks like, and perhaps what the future might be if they call on you and your team, Aviv, to help them. And so hopefully you get some folks to connect with you. And in the meantime, as their pen test is automated in the background, they can check out some of the cartoons that you've developed as well.
Definitely, we're always happy to partner with people, to get security validation and give people, the path to exposure reduction in a consistent manner. I think everyone that have been employing our technology would testify, and a lot of them are actually doing that very vocally, that their lives and operations have been bettered in a great deal. And I wanted to thank you guys for having me here today. I think we talked about a lot of things, from society to revolution, and it all began with the little calculator.
That's right.
Yep.
I enjoyed it greatly. Thank you very much.
Oh, I truly enjoyed it. Like you said, we look at it from different perspective. We had some fun, but definitely spoke about very, very serious subject. And a little reminder that there will be links to Pentera, links to connect with you guys in the show notes. And I am looking forward to many more stories. I want to dig in more in the art that you're doing, in the human aspect of creativity that is there, that we still need. Even when it's all automated, we still need the creativity of the humans.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aviv.
Thank you, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.